Now on to shallow or on to foundations. Foundations for residential structures are usually pretty shallow. They don't go super deep underground, and they transfer loads to the soil very near the surface. So right here you have a footing, and all the way to the buildings on here, and it just gets kind of transferred down to the soil, which should already be compressed. So therefore, it's not going to sink because the soil is already very compressed. So here's one example that you should note down. Maybe you can take a picture of this one. Is a spread or column footing. And this one is just a rectangular pad in the basement of some of our home walkthroughs. If we got a chance to do a construction visit, you saw that in the basement they had these spread footings where the columns were, where the piers. We saw them as columns. These steel columns, I don't believe they had any concrete or masonry in the ones that we've seen. But in our school here, there's spread footings all over because there's columns all over, or piers, concrete piers. There's also continuous strip foundations. These are very common in residential structures. So you might want to note that down too. They're under foundation walls, and on a residential visit we would see this strip footing here, and on top of that is the foundation wall. But this is really thick. It's thick so that it spreads the load out. The wider you are, if you remember, pressure equals force divided by area. And so if you have a larger area, then your pressure actually is reduced, the pressure onto the ground. So with a really wide area, then you have less pressure. So for example, if I have something with a really large area like this and I put it onto my hand, it's not going to sink into my hand because it has a huge area. So it just kind of rests there. But if I put something like this with a really tiny area and I let it just kind of slam into my hand, it will sink in. There's also slab on grade. This would be for areas, we probably wouldn't see that around here in Colorado, but if there is a very shallow frost depth, then you might see just a thickened slab here on the edge, but it's continuous to slab on grade. Slab on grade just means pouring concrete right on the ground. And this would be if you're not really super concerned about frost. You still do pour concrete slab on grade, but it's not connected to the footings. In Colorado, they want those separate so that it doesn't cause it to heave. If there's no frost risk, then it might be one continuous pour. And that's it for residential foundations.